For the 10th volume of this quest, I set out after the strangest quarry of all. Not a star or a field or a law, but the fact that any of it is known at all. Consciousness is the one phenomenon we cannot get outside of, and it sits at the exact seam where my two lifelong preoccupations meet: the electrical nature of living things and the electrical nature of the cosmos. The question grew too large for a single book, so I split it in two. The first, the electrical brain, stays close to the organ we actually possess. The second, mind in the cosmos, widens the frame until it takes in the whole universe. Together, they ask one question in two sizes. Is mind only something brains do, or is it in some sense something the cosmos contains? I wrote both books the way I have written all the others, as a juror, not an advocate. Every claim carries a label that marks how well it is supported, not how thrilling it is. Established science for what is replicated and mechanistically understood, contested but serious for what working scientists actively fight over, and speculative bridge for a link that is plausible in principle but not yet demonstrated, with a plainer verdict still for the claims the evidence simply will not carry. I have been the friend of the outsider for a lifetime, and I gave the outsider's ideas their fullest hearing here. But I graded them without mercy, and I let the grade fall where the evidence put it. The electrical brain begins with the oldest and hardest question: what consciousness is, and why there should be anything it is like to be a living thing at all. I take the hard problem seriously rather than defining it away, and I hold the first-person world, the felt interior of experience, as a fact to be explained, not explained off. From there, I turn to the brain as a physical, electrical, and possibly field-generating system. I lay out what is genuinely established: that neurons signal by ion currents across their membranes, that the tissue produces measurable rhythms and electromagnetic fields, that an EEG reads a real and orderly electrical music. Then I press the harder question, whether those brain-scale fields do any computational work or merely leak out as a byproduct. That is where the honest line falls, and I mark it as a speculative bridge rather than a settled fact. I give the leading theories of consciousness: global workspace, integrated information, higher order, and predictive processing accounts, a fair and skeptical hearing, and I show why each remains contested rather than proven. The middle of the book follows the body and its natural experiments. Mind is not a brain in a jar. It is embodied and interoceptive, built as much from the gut and the heartbeat as from the cortex, and it is social, stitched together with other minds through attention, empathy, and shared regard. Then I turn to the reliable erasures. Sleep, dreams, and above all, anesthesia are the cleanest test bed we have because they switch consciousness off and on under something close to experimental control, and I read them closely for what the brain must be doing to hold a mind together and what breaks when it stops. The later parts take up the question that draws the cranks and deserves better than they give it. Is the brain an antenna? Does it broadcast or receive like a radio? I refuse to wave the idea away, and I refuse to indulge it. I work through the actual physics, radio frequency wavelengths against the size of a head, the dielectric behavior of water and tissue, what a phased array like HARP truly is and is not. And I ask, soberly, whether one brain's fields could influence another, or the water in a pool, or the weather. The verdict is disciplined. The brain is best understood as a generator and, at most, a local transducer of fields, not a transmitter flinging thoughts across the sky. I close the first book where the organ's story runs out, in animal and infant minds, and in the question of whether a machine could ever host awareness of its own. Mind in the Cosmos takes the risk the first book refused. If mind is electrical and field-born in the brain, and if the universe is itself an electrical structure, then it is at least worth asking, carefully, whether mind is only what brains do, or something the cosmos, in some sense, holds. I open with cosmology and the anthropic question, why the constants sit where they must for observers to exist at all, and I weigh the great metaphysical alternatives to a purely physical account. Panpsychism, that experience goes all the way down. Idealism and cosmic idealism, that mind is the ground rather than the product. Cosmopsychism, that the whole is conscious and we are its fragments. I take them seriously as ideas. I connect them where I can to the real electromagnetic architecture of the cosmos, and I hold them to the same standard as everything else, pressing always on the difference between a universe that is merely mind-like and a universe that actually contains mind. From there I turn to the collective and planetary versions of the same hope, whether many minds form something larger, whether a project logging the world's random numbers on days of shared emotion has found anything real, whether the Earth itself is in any defensible sense a living or conscious system. And I lay out plainly the hard problems any science of mind must clear: measurement, causation, binding, other minds, substrate, combination, the evolutionary puzzle of why experience should have been selected at all, and the explanatory boundary past which our present methods cannot see. Then I walk out onto the most speculative bridges in the whole quest: near-death experiences, PSI and presentiment, intention effects, brain as receiver, and quantum consciousness proposals, and I do there what I have done everywhere. I describe honestly what has been claimed. I separate the anomaly that is merely unexplained from the anomaly that is well established, and I say clearly what would count as stronger evidence. Most of it I mark as weakly supported. None of it I pretend to have refuted, because pretending is not the method. I give the fringier counter. Models their day in court as well: strong idealism, cosmopsychism as radical metaphysics, spiritual field theories, and the strong electromagnetic theories of consciousness, and I grade each on what it can be made to predict and to risk. I did not want to end in either a creed or a shrug, so the last movement of the book is about how to make this a science rather than a mood. I set out standards for evidence, sketched the brain field and RF and water experiments that could move the needle, ask how one would actually test a global or a cosmic consciousness, and, most important to me, ask what would falsify each of the leading alternative models. A claim that cannot fail is not yet a claim about the world. The synthesis is where I say what I think. I lay out 3 possible futures for the problem: that mind turns out to be wholly and satisfyingly explained by the electrical brain, that it requires some genuine widening of physics we cannot yet see, or that it remains permanently the one place our third-person methods cannot fully reach. I do not know which future is ours, and I say so. What I will commit to is this: the strong version of the neuron-only story is not yet the closed case its confident defenders claim, and the strong version of the cosmic mind story is nowhere near earned by the evidence its enthusiasts offer. The truth, if we ever reach it, lies in the disciplined middle, and it will be reached by measurement, not by longing. I end on the human place in all of it. We are the part of the universe that woke up and turned to look at itself, an electrical animal on an electrical world under an electrical sky, asking whether the sky asks anything back. I cannot tell you that it does. I tell you the question is real, that it has not been closed by the confident people on either side who insist it has, and that keeping it open honestly, crediting what is established, marking what is speculative, declining what the evidence will not bear, is the only posture worthy of a mind trying to understand mind. That is what these 2 books are, taken together: the cross-examination of the last and nearest mystery, conducted with the same discipline I have tried to bring to all the rest.